Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Let's Talk Broncos, brought to you by Mile High Sports. I'm Bree Maestas here with Zach Seegers and Joey Richards. How are you both doing this evening?
I'm doing really well. Very solid day. I'm just hanging out. Excited to talk some Broncos football with you guys. Training camp is fully going now. We're fully in the swing of things. And we have to talk about some unfortunate news, obviously, with some injuries, some stuff like that. But it happens in training camp. Unfortunately, it's a big part of it. Now it's about how the Broncos rebound, and I'm just excited to talk to you guys about all of this.
Yeah, same here. Unfortunately, we've got a lot of news to talk about, but we do have a lot to talk about. So let's just get right into it.
We'll jump right into it. As you both have alluded to, training camp is in full force. We're about halfway through. And unfortunately, there has been a bit of an injury bug that has bitten the Denver Broncos. And this is no secret or something that has not happened before in history. But this one seems to be pretty impactful, both with Tim Patrick and Maria Crockett injuring their ACLs, being out for the season. This means that the depth that George Paton has established in this team is going to come in really handy as we try to work through how big of an impact this is. I kind of want to start off just with that question to you both, because I think this is a huge topic we need to cover. With Tim Patrick being out, how concerned are you both with how this season is going to play out, what the wide receiver room is going to look like, and will they reach outward into the league to bring someone in, or do you think they have those pieces here on the team as it stands? Joey, let's start with you.
Okay, so I think it's a big deal, guys. A lot of Broncos fans are talking about how it's not that big of a deal, but I tweeted this, but I don't think it's fair to sing Tim Patrick's praises like we have. Like on this podcast, guys should check out the podcast with Pat Quixote, but we were talking about how it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that this guy could be our most productive receiver, right? I don't think any of us would have just been absolutely shocked if that were the case.
He's been the last 2 years and arguably the most valuable offensive player of the last 2 years.
Right.
And I don't know if my vote would go to him, but it's an argument. Sorry.
No, yeah, go ahead. I just think that it wouldn't be fair for us to talk about him like that. And then when he gets hurt for the year, just say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think it's a really big deal. Tim Patrick, I don't think, is a replaceable piece on the Denver Broncos roster, and sitting where we are with the offseason, free agency period pretty much wrapped up. Obviously, you can still pick up players, but the main guys are gone. We just gave Tim Patrick that extension, obviously. I think he's an irreplaceable piece. Now, are the Broncos doomed? I don't think they're doomed. I don't. But does it limit their offense more? I think yes, for sure. I think it definitely does. Zach, do you have a take on that one, man?
And I don't think it dooms them. Like, I agree with everything you said. I don't think it dooms them, but I think it opens up the possibility of doom. I don't think there was a world where this offense was going to be doomed. And I still don't think, again, doom might be a little strong, but like there's a world where like everyone I think is just assuming like, okay, Sutton's going to be 2019 Sutton and Jerry Jeudy's finally going to pop and look like a star. And KJ Hamler is going to be Tyler Lockett. And like, I think there's a chance, each of those things happen. And there's even a chance all those things happen. There's I think another chance where none of those things happen. And if none of those things happen, man, now the Broncos are in a lot of trouble. You look at Albert O, who also has some injury questions. Like Tim Patrick, I think, provided a pretty solid floor, and now the floor is kind of dropped out. And it's concerning.
Yeah.
Isn't it safe to say that we're not necessarily looking for a receiver on the current Broncos roster to replace the production that Tim Patrick would have made? I think that you're kind of looking them to fill those gaps instead. With him being that big body receiver, I think you're going to find that you're not looking traditionally to replace what he would have done.
No, I think it's impossible. Like I said earlier, I think it's impossible to replace what Tim Patrick's done at this point. And guys, I've seen a lot of this. Or Zach, chime in real quick because I think you have something to directly say before I
do actually think I disagree with you here a little. I think it can't be replaced by any one individual. And I don't think they're going to sign anyone that's going to replace Tim Patrick on this roster. I do think like a platoon of guys together are going to have to step up and kind of replace that wide receiver 2 workload. But like if we see steps from Judy and Hamler, and you see maybe even Seth Williams, and then you see like Albert O and Greg Dulcich being used some kind of as like wide receiver tight end hybrids in the slot. I think they can, and again, maybe not fully replace it. Maybe replace is the wrong word.
It's the style more so that I was speaking to.
Yeah, you can replace him somewhat and make up for it somewhat. But it's not like you're not going to erase the void that you're with for Tim. I don't know how to explain it. Like, I think you can make it's possible for the Broncos to find some guys on the roster to step up, and they can be okay without this Tim Patrick in their offense. They can find a way to replace what they were planning on doing with Tim Patrick with other players, but it's going to require a lot of other players to step up. And it still, you're looking to like get 80% of what Tim Patrick was giving you. It's going to be hard to get 100% of what Tim Patrick was giving you.
Yeah, but even then, like, we would have Tim Patrick and these other guys. Like, that's the irreplaceable part.
Yeah,
like it's just like now we're asking
in terms of like how the offense functions.
Totally, and I agree with you. But I also want to hit on this real quick. It seems like people are wanting to replace like the Tim Patrick role in the offense. I think that's pretty much impossible. You're not, like I said earlier, you're not going to go sign anybody that's going to replace that. It's like Zach mentioned earlier, it's going to be more of a, I think, multiple players equaling that amount of production is your best odds there. And I also it's funny to me, I don't think that just because we lost a big-bodied receiver, that means the Broncos need to add some guy that is in the exact same height, weight, speed. Like, the receiver is such an interesting position, and it's really the only position like this where you see all different types of height, weight, speed, right? Like you see guys that are 6'5" to 5'11" to 6'3". There's multiple ways to be a good receiver. The Broncos don't need to replace Tim Patrick with, try to replace Tim Patrick with Tim Patrick, because that's impossible. Just try to get your best player out there, and it's up to Hackett to put that guy in the best position possible.
Yeah, and I just, instead of trying to replace that role of what he brings as far as like obviously physically, the height kind of mismatch that I was thinking about there, it's just interesting to me. I do worry about also his role on the roster. I know he'll still be around the team. It's frustrating. It's hard to swallow. It's still devastating. When Zach put out that poll, I was, obviously in the 8 to 10 range, and I still feel like I'm a 7.5 to 8, because I think that you do lose something very integral to the wide receiver room. And that's why I wanted to get into our first question, I believe from Ty, regarding yeah, absolutely. Underrated loss with his blocking. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's totally true, especially in this scheme where like you're looking for receivers to block. Judy was already kind of a question mark there in the slot. That's obviously a bigger blocking role right there, but I mean, Hamler's not going to be much of a guy blocking either. You're totally right. That is an underrated thing.
Yeah, that was a comment from D Bronx just saying that, Patrick is going to bring a lot in the blocking game. I do think you can replace some of that with using some of the athletic tight ends the Broncos have. Again, it's maybe a big slot, but
totally.
I don't know if they'll be as good in that role as Patrick could have.
Sure, been. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. We'll jump right into it. Ty asks, who is the front runner to take added snaps in Tim Patrick's absence? Zach, do you want to take that first?
Sure. Yeah. Looking at it today, I don't, it's so tough. I mean, it's got to be KJ Hamler, the number one. Like, that's the obvious one. He's going to be joining that top 3 group. Who fills that void behind Hamler? That's a big question right now. I think Kendall Hinton is the leader in the clubhouse right now. I know this coaching staff really trusts him. He's proven on offense. I think people are letting the Montrell Washington hype get like a little too out of hand.
This is coming from the guy
Montrell Washington stan
on his Twitter account.
Because like it was a fun meme when I was like the first person on the beat, and then I'm like getting replies that, wow, Montreal Washington is stealing playing time from Judy.
Started it.
I need to hop off that bandwagon quick.
Well,
No,
it's hard
Montreal
not to
Washington's
because
looks
it was
really
hard
good.
not to root for him, though. And so when you see all
Still
that
is.
positive news coming out of camp, like you want to buy into that. I'll be the first one to admit, yeah, I think I'm overinflating the hype, but I want it to happen. Does that mean it's out of the? Go ahead.
I think you'd be hard pressed to name another offensive MVP. Like he has been phenomenal. Now, some of that's him going up against the twos, and the starters are going up against ones and whatnot. But he's been really impressive consistently. Almost every day of practice, he's scoring a touchdown or two. Oftentimes big, deep splash play touchdowns that are going to get fans and every media member excited because it's pretty easy to see what's happening there. And I get it. And I think there's a lot to be excited about Montreal Washington. Like when he was drafted, it was a lot of, whoa, most people didn't expect this guy to get drafted. Did the Broncos make a horrible mistake? And I feel confident now, like this guy at least looks like worthy of a 5th round swing of the bat. You know, like I'm comfortable with that now. I think he looks like a rookie. Like all these rookies, we need to see it on Sundays. We need to see it when it matters. Who knows if they have any value until that point? But he's done everything you would have asked from him at camp, and that's promising. But his body type is the type that would thrive without contact. So let's see what he does once we get contact in the mix. Like, okay, he can do it without contact. Great. I'm worried about how the I don't know how big he is. I don't want to be disrespectful, but 5'10", 5'11", however big he is. A skinny guy is going to hold up to consistent contact. I do think he's going to be a bigger part of this offense than I did like a month ago. But yeah, we have to see it all. I think Kendall Hinton is the safe bet for like number 4, KJ for number 3.
Yeah.
5'10", 170 pounds, just in case you're curious.
Okay. I agree with Zach there. I think that it has to be KJ Hamler. He has to be the guy that is really going to, what's up, Kale? What's going to have to step up at the beginning, at least. I think that's the guy you're expecting to. Now, I will say it's like a little bit scary that we're in a situation where KJ Hamler is taking that big of a load. Like usually guys coming off an injury like he had, you really start to see him come back to his true form a year removed from it. And asking him to come in right away where it's been like he's just now starting to get into shape and stuff like that. That's a huge, big deal. And that's why I think we all kind of remember this last season. The Broncos tried to add a couple receivers mid-season, and it was kind of a disaster, right? David Moore and John Brown didn't work out. I hope that if the Broncos were going to add a receiver, it would be sooner than later. I think picking up an offense mid-season is an impossible task. I don't like these little they get 10 snap a game type thing and we're going to ease them in because we need them now in that situation, right? Like we're going to be desperate for them. So I don't know. Do you guys have an opinion on if the Broncos should add a receiver?
Well, I wanted to touch on that when you mentioned Hamler. Not only did he have to get back into shape, he had to add a bunch of weight. He lost so much when he was just healing up from those surgeries. He lost a lot of weight. He's right back to form. That's kind of taxing on the body. Do I think they need to go outside necessarily to replace that wide receiver depth? I don't think so. I think that's the reason why they amassed so much prior to the season beginning. I just don't know which ones in general are going to be the ones to take that role, and which I wanted to just kind of use that to segue a little bit. We can continue talking about that. We've obviously, is Washington a real weapon on the offense, and how does Fulgham look? I think those two, Zach, you've been saying are potential. Fulgham has absolutely been, filling in there. What are you seeing out of the wide receiver depth? Who's going to kind of not even shimmy in there, but who's going to earn that spot as the depth has to come up and replace those? How many wide receivers do they keep?
Yeah. I think the odds of 7 is more likely now because there's more uncertainty at the position. So you kind of want to, I think, add extra guys to supplement that, make up for not having Patrick, because it's going to take more than one person to pick up that workload, as I was saying before. So I think 1 through 3 is obviously Sutton, Judy, Hamler. I agree with what Judy's saying about, or not Judy, sorry, what Joey's saying about the workload. um, uh, and Hitton, I think, will be mixing a lot because the coaching staff, I get the impression they trust him a good bit. But I do think Hamler is such a good fit with Wilson. We're going to see a good bit of that. Washington, I imagine if he can prove it during preseason, we'll get mixed in a good bit there. Trey Quinn is a guy that hasn't impressed me during camp, but like just everything I keep hearing is like, oh yeah, this guy's a guy who's probably going to make the roster. So I'm giving into it at this point. There's always like one player that I watch during camp and preseason, and I think they're kind of milk toast, and I don't want them to make the roster for that reason, and they always do. And I think this year it's Trey Quinn. And then I'd say one of like Tyree Cleveland, Seth Williams, or maybe a guy they pick up elsewhere. To be that seventh person, maybe add some extra size to that room. Just because now without Tim Patrick, that room is kind of small. Sneaky. It went from being a room with a lot of size to a room with probably not enough size. And again, too many people are like, oh, Seth Williams is the next Tim Patrick, or like, oh, Tyree Cleveland is or Travis Fulgham's the next Tim Patrick. Really quick, last thing on the Fulgham note, I've been long-winded. I don't see it with Fulgham. I think it was kind of, his whole thing was kind of like a Jeremy Lin deal, if I'm being honest. It like happened for a couple months, but he's bounced around the league since then for a reason. He's been in Denver for a long time now, and he's never like really jumped out to me in a padded practice. There were like a couple OTA practices earlier this year where he looked good, but Tyree Cleveland had more OTA practices where he looked good. So I would not be buying the Fulgham hype.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Absent from your list of the rundown of all the wide receivers the Broncos have, Caden Davis, Brandon Johnson. I know that you're pretty high on both of them.
Yeah, I am. I think they're both really good practice squad guys. Sorry, I thought you were taking a shot at my long-windedness. I was laughing. I think they're really good practice squad receivers. I think they could. Brandon Johnson, I think, can maybe make the roster. Caden Davis, I feel, is a little redundant because I think Trey Quinn has the inside track on him as a special teams player. And then Caden Davis is kind of just like a slightly lesser Montrell Washington. I bet he'll be on practice squad. I think he'll be a good practice squad player. But yeah, I think that's probably where it maxes out.
All right. Okay.
Brandon Johnson, yeah, more of a Z receiver, could be insurance for him and Judy.
Sweet. That covers them all, I think. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it. I am going to move on to the next one because I know Ryan Newman wanted to know today, how has Bradley Chubb looked?
Yeah, I thought he's looked really good. He's had some reps against Garrett Bowles that have been really impressive, and I like the creative ways they're using him. And these defensive linemen, I know there'll be a question about that in a second, where you're seeing him twist with different guys and work inside. I think he used one of Bradley Chubb's strengths there a lot. And I don't think the coaching staff is really overselling it when they say, like, this is one of the better versions of Chubb we've seen. And the Chubb-Bowles matchup has been one of the better, more evenly matched ones out there. I'd say maybe even give the early advantage to Chubb there, as the defensive line has kind of generally outplayed the offensive line, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I've been really impressed with Chubb, and I'm optimistic if he can stay healthy, we'll at least get more of a 2018 version of Chubb.
Yeah, Chubb is a huge swing factor for this team, I think. Like, one of the biggest, and when I say swing factor, it's like if he plays good, it's a massive swing in the right direction for the Broncos. If he doesn't play good, massive swing in the wrong direction for the Broncos, right? And we've seen both sides of Chubb. We've seen the injuries, but we've also seen the guy that we all thought was going to be a Pro Bowl type player, right? A guy that was drafted in the top 5 of the draft. So I'll be really interested to watch him this year. Another note that's always kind of interested me is it seems like players around the league talk about Chubb at a higher note than fans do. Just something that I've picked up through the years watching him. Yeah, those are my Chubb notes.
that obviously plays into whether or not he can remain healthy. And I think fans are just a little bit in hesitation mode with that. Is that, yeah, if he remains healthy and he plays a full season, because there is some concern at the depth in the position. And so you want to make sure that, like, if he goes down, is that where the main focus is going to be? It kind of ties into what Josh was asking with the D-line and the edge rotation. What are you seeing, and what can you tell us, Zach, without stepping over that line?
Yeah, so I can't, just in case people are curious, because I get a lot of questions asking like this specifically. I am not allowed to say this person is with first team, these people are with second team, these people are with the third team, right? I can't say stuff like that. But like Bradley Chubb has been rushing Russell Wilson a lot, right? Bradley Chubb has been rushing Russell Wilson a lot, and Patrick Surtain and Justin Simmons have been back there in coverage. Okay. I think opposite Bradley Chubb, the person who I've been seeing the most is Malik Reed, which is very surprising to me and probably deeply nauseating to Joey. I'm surprised by it. I think that's something we could see change next week. I think they haven't adjusted the depth chart at all, really, since the coaching staff came in. I'm hoping we finally see some of that next week. So that's part of it. Also up there, I think, that starting or like when the season, I really like the talent all along that defensive front. I think you think about combining guys like Bradley Chubb with Draymond Jones and DJ Jones, and I think that's really, really exciting. That's something that's really fantastic. I think then you think about pairing guys like shoot, I'm sorry, everyone. I'm trying to think. Joey, what do you think about Bradley Chubb really quick? Buy me some time here.
Okay, yeah, for sure. What do I think about Bradley Chubb? Like I said earlier, a huge swing factor. That's the biggest thing. Really, I'm kind of concerned a little bit just because, and the reason why it's a swing factor positive negatively is just because the depth behind Bradley Chubb. I think that we have a lot of good pass rush potential back there, but I don't think we really have a 3-down type person that I don't know if we have like who's a good backup edge that the Broncos have had. Like, oh my God, what's his name? Atachu? Do you guys remember him? Yes. Like he was a guy that wasn't spectacular in any specific area, but more well-rounded. Like we saw a little of everything. Whereas I'm more concerned with the Broncos' depth now, where it's like, oh, they could be really good in this one specific area and really bad in this other. You know what I mean? You just don't see a guy that you feel comfortable saying that's for sure the starter if Bradley Chubb goes down. And obviously with the injury concerns, that's a big deal.
Absolutely. Zach, did you ever get back to your point?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm seeing some questions. I want to see, Kale says he wants to see Baron Browning with the ones, and I do too. Yeah. I haven't seen any of that yet. I think Baron Browning has looked really impressive though, but not going to unseat Randy Gregory and Bradley Chubb, but lots of Baron Browning and Nick Benito out there providing pressure to help out like Caden Stearns and PJ Locke on that back end, right? And then they're getting helped out a lot by Deshaun Williams and Mike Purcell and a bit of a surprise, Uwazurike. I think Uwazurike, and I'm ready to say I was wrong. I did not like that draft pick a lot. I did not love his Iowa State film. He has been looking fantastic. I've been really impressed with him and his athleticism. Like he's this mammoth of a man, maybe the biggest person on the roster when you factor in like height and weight. 6'6", 316, I believe.
My goodness.
And you see him twisting with Baron Browning. Like Baron Browning going inside and Uwazurike twisting around him and giving the backup tackles work and driving him back into the quarterback. Uwazurike's been phenomenal. Eric Trickle was a big fan of him, and I'm happy to say I was wrong there.
Yeah,
Awesome.
excited to see him.
I do want to chime in here. D-Rock had a nice question here in the comments. So will the D be the deciding factor in winning games this season until the offense starts to gel? We've seen that a little bit, that the offense is apparently kind of a bit of step behind during practice. We are talking about practice, but it is kind of what's been coming out is that the defense just seems to be getting their grip on things a little bit early on the offense. But with a new system, a new head coach, a new quarterback, that was to be expected. You guys think that the defense is going to maybe step up here in the first couple of games, or how are you feeling about that?
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of needed. Like this was a take I had a while ago. If you guys don't remember, like this was when you go back and look through quarterbacks, brand new quarterbacks to new teams, they typically start off a little slow. Like we saw it with Tom Brady with Tampa Bay, started off a little slow. We saw that. I don't know if you guys remember that New Orleans game. I don't remember if he threw 2 or 3 picks and a loss. Even Peyton Manning, when he came to the Broncos, we didn't see the best of Peyton Manning until the end of that first year. We all thought we were on a Super Bowl ride. Luckily for the Broncos, the beginning of our schedule, like those first couple of games, don't seem that difficult. It seems like games that our defense should be able to win. Going to Seattle, right? Like Drew Lock, Geno Smith. That should be a good game for our defense. These are games that I think our defense can win, but I think you hit it right on the head. I think that the defense is going to have to be the deciding factor a little early on while the offense gels. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be a whole season long worth of gelling, right? But I think that we're going to see the best of the Broncos offense towards the end of the season.
I fully agree. No, I don't know. I think the offense is going to be good. Like this is why you get a superstar quarterback. I think we're still kind of in like Teddy Bridgewater mode where it's like, oh my God, we lost a piece of the offense and now everything's going to collapse. And I'm not trying to diminish Tim Patrick's value, but part of the reason you trade all those picks for a quarterback and soon are going to be paying him like $50 million a year. The reason you do all that is because he elevates those around him and not everything around him has to be perfect. It's not as ideal as it was before and it's going to hurt, but I don't think we should view the offense now as like some downtrodden shipwrecked unit. I don't think that's accurate.
Doesn't that have something to do with the line as well, though?
I do think the D is a bigger swing factor to like bring up what Joey was talking about. Like,
I just think that
might have more variance to it.
I just think that there's so much newness to our offense. I think that it's going to take a little bit of time to gel. Like, I don't think we're going to see the best of the Broncos offense at the beginning. We've seen, as I mentioned earlier, Hall of Fame, amazing quarterbacks struggle going to new teams. And we have a new head coach, new quarterback. Like, I think the Broncos offense is going to catch on, but I think there might be a little bit of a gel period.
Okay, but like week 1 and 2 is Seattle and Houston. Like
totally.
I think the gelling offense can get by those teams. You know, like I don't think it's like, oh my God, we need strong defensive showings, or we are. I just think that's where I push back on the D being the deciding.
I just think that in those games, it's going to be easier for the defense to have a showing.
I think they are just going to show out at that point.
Yeah.
Zach, did you want to touch on the signing of Max Borghi?
I did. It's like when you order some food and like leave it out on your counter like overnight and then like come back to it.
What the hell? You're not a big Max Borghi guy?
No, and like I liked him a lot at Washington State, but there were a couple like I think like an outside zone run and like a pitch during OTAs where I was like, oh, he looks noticeably slow. I thought maybe it was like a weird rep thing. But we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, he's there to replace Crockett, and I don't think Crockett was going to have this massive impact on the offense this season. So I don't really.
Well, Mike Kliss was saying he had better than a 50-50 chance of making the roster. So do you think they were going in that direction, and maybe that's why?
maybe is more like special teams, right? Now that'll be interesting to see if Borgie will be able to like contribute on that side greatly. I think it's kind of interesting. Hypothetically, he brings a little bit of a difference to our backfield and type of archetype or play style, right? Like, so that's a little interesting. But at the end of the day, if he's going to make the roster, he's going to have to play special teams. He's going to have to be a contributor on that. You can't be fourth string running back making the roster and you're not very good at special teams. It just is what it is.
I don't think they're going to have a fourth running back because they're going to have a fullback. There's other positions they want to be deep at. You're not carrying 5 people in the backfield, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's fair. I think I agree there. It's just interesting to take on that. Again, another unfortunate injury that we didn't cover in depth there, but I didn't know if you guys wanted to add anything else with the running backs before we move on. With that injury happening, obviously the focus on the field with both ACLs happening, I know that Broncos country was really interested to know, obviously when it happened, it kind of sucked the energy out of practice, out of Dove Valley. There was a lot of silence and it was kind of hard. Obviously, can't blame them. That was a tremendous loss of both of them. But how is the focus back on the field after the injuries? Zach?
Yeah, I think the focus was good today. It wasn't like, I think there was a fun atmosphere the first 6 days. I think that's what Hackett's kind of re-injected into the locker room. Things were so not fun under Fangio, and I think it's like football's fun again. Today, I don't think it was as fun, obviously, but I don't think it was sad. I think like the back half of day 6 was sad after the Patrick injury because I think everyone knew in their heart what happened there, unfortunately. Today wasn't sad, but it was very like, all right, let's show up and let's get shit done. And not in a negative way. I don't want to frame it negatively because I don't think it was, but it didn't have – like everyone went about their business and got shit done. And it didn't have like a negative or sad energy, but it didn't have like maybe the same goofy, happy, upbeat feel that past practices have.
Yeah, just hitting on the injuries real quick. It's interesting how much of, and I feel like people don't really like talking about it because we all want to have the answers. As far as like how good the team will be going into the training camp and stuff like that. But it's just so much of this comes down to luck. Like no team is going to have a perfect roster. A lot of it comes down to how many injuries you have and where the injuries are. And if you have quality depth to back that player up. It really is the unfortunate part of the game. But I bet if you go back and look at the Super Bowl teams, you're going to see more times than not those were some of the more healthy teams, right? Like injuries really, really matter.
They do matter. And it is a great point, Joey. No, you're fine. I did want to talk about those moving pieces and what you're going to see at depth, especially the offensive line. I want to move to Broncos Wizard, and Mike over at MHRT 5280 podcast asked, what is the guard battle looking like? Can you kind of report on what they're doing there to the best of your ability without, again, crossing lines?
Yeah. The guard battle, I think, is really fascinating. It's already been publicly reported that Moody has been splitting reps at times. I won't say what team the players he's splitting reps with, but he has been splitting reps with Dalton Reisner and Quinn Miners, right? And that's public information that's already out there to everyone.
Take his credentials away.
Yeah. On a completely
well, now Zach's fired.
On a completely different and unrelated note, I do think, and some of this is Tom Compton being out right now, but I think there's a top 3 emerging in that guard room. Unrelated to that. And so after that, I don't really know what the battle looks like. It might be like Ben Braden battling Tom Compton for a roster spot. But Tom Compton can also be a backup tackle. So I think now maybe they view Tom Compton as a backup tackle and they keep Ben Braden as a backup guard. Right. So yeah, I don't know. But Moody is a person to definitely watch. I don't know if he ends up starting, but he's definitely going to be in competition for, I think, a starting guard job all year long. If he doesn't get it initially, he's going to have whoever is starting on the hot seat. And I do feel confident just saying, like, my belief personally is that Quinn Miners is starting. I know he's been splitting reps with Moody, but I don't buy into that stuff. And I did some sniffing around today, and that built my confidence in that I shouldn't be buying into that nonsense. Because Quinn Miners is like the second best offensive lineman already as a rookie. The sky's the limit for him. He makes a lot of sense in this system. I think there's some development to be done. But I think all things said and done, he is your starting right guard.
Yeah, he's the guy you want to develop, right?
Left guard, I'm more unsure about.
Yeah. Miners is the guy you kind of want to develop. And as much as we act like this doesn't play a part, where you're drafted plays a part. It really does. And how young you are plays a part. Quinn Miners, coming in from Wisconsin Whitewater, had his senior year canceled. He could, what we saw last year was that coming off of Wisconsin Whitewater and no senior year football. We're entering year 2 now. The sky's the limit for the guy. He tested off the charts. You want to develop him. You really want him to work out because his ceiling is so high.
Zach, we were talking a little bit about how the seriousness has changed for Quinn Miners and how he, has kind of adapted more of an approach of last year was a lot of fun. This year was a lot of, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and that actually totally goes into our next question. That's why
it's a segue.
Oh, my bad. Perfect.
Have there been any notable physical changes for the Broncos?
That's right. You knew where I was going with it. I
knew
forgot I put that in the chat.
We finish each other's sentences.
Okay. So Quinn Miners has Frankie was asking about if there have been any notable big physical changes for the Broncos, because you always hear there's the classic summer trope so and so's in the best shape of his life. Quinn Miners has shaved off a little over 15 pounds off his playing weight, which I think makes sense somewhat. Last year he was playing in a gap power scheme. Now he's in his own blocking scheme. I think now I'm curious. I should have researched this ahead of time. I wonder if there's if any of our listeners want to research for us really quick.
If you got shorter.
I think he might have added the weight last year. I think that might have been something he talked about last year during camp, was adding.
You know what?
I remember.
I think I vaguely remember that.
Right. I can't place that. So if anyone wants to Google that really quick, I do think either way, I'm not stressed about it, but I think that's the big physical change. Hopefully he keeps his same strength and ferocity in his game.
The NFL scouting report in 2021, he steadily gained weight through 2018, got up to around 335. So to be back down to around 320, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it definitely is. 15 pounds is nothing to be. It's not light. That's a lot of weight. That's a lot of weight.
Me your way, Quinn. Tell me if I need to start running some more hills, possibly.
Yeah.
At the combine, he was at 320.
So he put on 15 pounds for the season.
So popped up to 335 for the season, and now we're seeing him go back down to
320,
around 320 for the zone blocking scheme. So I'm not concerned about it, but that's, I think, the biggest physical change.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's great. Any other notable ones before I go ahead and?
That's the only one. None that were really physically apparent to me. I honestly asked around some media people with better sources, and I was like, hey, I had a question about this in my mailbag. Have you heard about anything? And Quinn Miners was the only really good one I got.
It'd be interesting to see if Baron Browning took any of that with his position change.
It's a good question. I'll follow up on that tomorrow maybe, and look for Frankie's question. I'll put a follow-up under it tomorrow on Twitter.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Fantastic. We'll move on to the last question that we received from Cal. Cal's in the chat right now. Have you noticed anything notable since pads came on? That obviously happened on Tuesday. And Hackett has taken, I believe, every third day to kind of dial that back a little bit as far as intensity goes. Sounds like on Friday they won't have pads on, but they will Thursday and Saturday. What have you noticed? What has the shift been? And what's been notable out of that move?
Yeah, we've only had one day of full pads so far, and Damari Mathis had his best practice that day. And I don't think it's a coincidence. You go back and look at him in college. He really thrived when he could work his hands on a guy. I do worry about him maybe getting penalized some, especially early on in his career in the NFL, at the NFL level. But you saw some really impressive reps from him that first day. I wrote about him in my risers and fallers column, not winners and losers, because that is not nice. Don't talk like that. That's not very nice. But so risers and fallers, Broncos stock report, go check out the article. Damari Mathis was awesome. And then I think the other thing that stood out since pads came on, and this is not great news. Well, it depends on how you want to look at it. It's good news or maybe it's bad news. I think the defensive front rather, has been outperforming the offensive front pretty consistently. And I think that goes to the second unit too.
I would like to say this was a very big talking point last year too. I think it's hard just from experience for offensive linemen in training camp. I really think it's tough for them. And like this was a big talking point last year where it was like, I remember it vividly. It's like everyone was predicting the Broncos offensive line to be so bad because of our joint practice. They apparently just got whooped up on. Ended up not being the worst ever. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And especially this offensive scheme, I think it's a lot more complex. It's asking a lot more of the offensive linemen, especially from like a chemistry standpoint in terms of comboing and like blocking and then climbing to the second level and getting another guy. I feel like those things take extra reps. So, we'll see how it develops. But it's provided an awesome ground for like Mike Purcell to make a really strong case for, hey, don't cut me to save money. And Uwazurike to make a really strong case for like, I'm going to be a sizable part of this defense in year one. And Henningsen to make a push for the roster. And then Baron Browning and Nick Benito have looked really good. And Bradley Chubb has looked really good. And all of a sudden you realize we're highlighting a lot more defensive line players for looking great than offensive players. And so, especially with the receiver room looking a little weakened, that might be a point of concern. But Joey raised some good points.
Yeah. Any final departing thoughts for all of our listeners before we get wrapped up here? I do want to remind anybody that if they have questions for Zach and want to get those answered while we have 3 more days of camp to go, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, go ahead and go over to Twitter. Follow him, Zach_Seegers, where you can send him all the questions that you would like him to answer. Do it publicly. There's a mailbag post that we have out there. I think we'll actually post about it too, asking for additional things you want coverage from, and then we'll be able to answer that on the next podcast. But also, Zach does a thread that you're going to want to follow him for, set your notifications for, and follow along, because if you can't make it out there, it is the next to best thing, other than live video, which we still don't know if that's even a possibility. I'm going to say probably no, but I don't want to get my phone confiscated for that. So we won't go that way. I did want to thank everybody for tuning in. It was a fantastic night interacting with all of you. We appreciate it so much. Zach, Joey, tell the people where they can find all your excellent work.
Yeah, everybody. Find all my writing at Mile High Sports. I'm still working. I actually just started writing, typing it out as my Baron Browning piece coming out soon. I'm going to work on it tonight again. I was watching some film. I just wrapped that up, so I'm excited about that coming out. You're going to be able to find that at Mile High Sports when it's out. And then, follow me at JR Drafts. Zach, my man.
Yeah, I want to just add on to what Bree was saying. LTV listeners, hit me up on the Twitter thread and be like, hey, can you watch this for me? I'm curious how these players are looking. And I make a point to like focus on those for the purpose of my live thread, because I can't have my eyes everywhere on the field. I kind of got to focus it somewhere. So I see what are people most curious about? What are they wanting to hear about? And I focus on it. So head over there and you'll get a little extra coverage on whatever you're personally curious about. Find all my writing over at milehighsports.com. As we were recording this, I dropped an article on wide receivers the Broncos could potentially target. Marquez Callaway, I think, is probably the best option out there. But go check out the piece for why I believe that. And yeah, Twitter, Zach_Seegers. I've got a live training camp thread. No one else does anything like it. If you enjoy it, you can't find it anywhere else.
Zach, way to multitask and do two things at once. I was going to say you weren't focused enough on what we were doing presently, but you were just able to do both at the same time. So I really appreciate that and your work ethic. If you haven't already, go ahead and download the MHS app.
I didn't write it. I just hit publish, just to be clear.
That would be absolutely miraculous if you were writing and publishing at the same time. But I know that you are just that good, so you'd be able to do that just fine. We wouldn't even have noticed. I am sidetracked, but I want to say, I don't know about that. I don't know. Have you seen that guy type? He doesn't even look at his screen. It's crazy. Yeah. This is Let's Talk Broncos. You can catch me Mondays and Wednesday with these guys over at the Fan Cave 98.1 FM with the Romeros and Tony Comas. Thanks for stopping by the chat, Tony. Appreciate you all. And yeah, let's go Broncos.
Go Broncos.